Welcome to episode 31 of 10,000 Africans podcast. This is your humble host, JD Tarpon. Make sure to subscribe to 10,000 Africans podcast on iTunes. Like us, review us, subscribe. Our guest on the show today is Frantz Saintellemy. He is the founder and chairman of the legendary Groupe 3737 in Montreal. Frantz's work is so impactful and so wide-ranging that I would actually have to let him tell his own story for himself. Welcome to the show, Frantz.
Thank you, JD. It's nice to be on the show. 10,000 Africans is exciting, and hopefully I'll be able to share my knowledge and my passion with your viewers.
Awesome, man. It's good to have you on. So I obviously brushed over what you do, but I want to know, what is the story that has led you here?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me. I think what you're trying to do with 10,000 Africans is honorable, and that's exactly the way I try to live my life, is to transfer knowledge as much as possible. Knowledge is king, knowledge is power, knowledge is the foundation. I myself am a product of knowledge, which includes education, but also institutionalized knowledge early on from my family foundation, but also throughout my network, my friends, the people that surround me every day. I consider myself an entrepreneur at heart, an engineer. I'm an engineer by trade, but I'm also an entrepreneur by heart and also a philanthropist. So today, our main ventures are all about basically knowledge transfer on wealth creation. It's about building institutions that can scale and be global conquerors. It's about basically creating an environment where young people can aspire to be entrepreneurs, and also creating an environment that is conducive to vision, not dreams. Dreams is not enough. We need to have a vision that is backed up with a plan. And the basic plan is you can do more when you know how to create wealth, when you know how to create an ecosystem to develop businesses, and you can scale those businesses. You can create institutions that can be then transferred to other generations. And so what we're trying to do with our expertise is really about knowledge and transferring that.
Man, that's incredible. I think, first of all, it's hard to keep up with what you're doing, because you have a group. Let's first talk about Groupe 3737. It's one of the largest incubators in the Montreal area, but especially for an incubator that specifically targets minorities. It's probably one of the few in Canada. So let's talk about that. Like, how did you start that?
Yeah, so in 2010, I was asking myself, how can I give back? In my industry, in the tech industry, I have the luxury of working with people that are billionaires, people that are, difference makers in different fields, and people that have a strong foundation. And I thought that, every day I'm creating wealth for people in other communities from different backgrounds than myself. And I felt that, all of that expertise, all of my background and know-how, and also, what I've been able to build for me in terms of economic wealth, I could give back to my community, and I could give back not just money, but also my knowledge. And so I thought about what could be a symbol that could go beyond Frantz Saintellemy. And so we thought about, basically about creating an institution around a concept of a hub. And so we decided that we were going to do it in a neighborhood that is typically known as a black neighborhood, but that doesn't necessarily resonate in a positive way when people think about that neighborhood. That neighborhood is called Saint Michel. It's in the northeast of Montreal. It's the second or third poorest borough in Canada. In fact, it's basically it's very well situated, very well located. However, it's not known for its the quality as a quality neighborhood. And I felt that this was a negative because, in my opinion, your neighborhood shouldn't have a bearing on where you can or should impede on your progress in life. But if you are from Saint Michel, and you say you're from Saint Michel, or people even look at your address, your postal code, it's a tool to discriminate. So I started thinking about how could we do something about that. And so we found an abandoned building that's right on the edge of the highway. And we basically renovated that building, created basically what we call a beacon of hope. And from there, we created an address. And so the 3737 basically is a 12-story building that we renovated. There's a little bit of a story behind the 3737. We didn't choose the address just for the sake of it. In the late 60s and up until the late, actually middle of the 80s, it was a textile center. In fact, at one time, it had the largest concentration of blacks and particularly Haitians, journeymen, as I call them, employees. So in other words, every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, people would line up in front of the building, create two separate lines, and they would be waiting for the manager or the foreman to come and pick whoever they wanted in terms of resources for the day. And then they would start all over again the next day. Really not the most pleasing conditions, really horrible conditions. And so we chose the 3737 because of that history. And we wanted to also send a message that your history and where you start, your beginnings, doesn't have to define where you end. And so today, it's ironic that the 3737 is the largest private incubator in the province of Quebec. It's a nonprofit organization, and its sole purpose is to educate and develop, minority, primarily black businesses. And it's also ironic that this building is also the United Nations, because the black community is now welcoming and creating high-valued jobs for other communities, and is now basically known as one of the most successful addresses in the neighborhood. In 2010, we opened up in March 2012, and today we have launched or created more than 40 businesses. We have trained more than 300 entrepreneurs. We have invested more than $12 million in businesses and job creation. We have created over 150 different high-value jobs in the neighborhood. And to a point where, which gives me great pleasure, last summer I was playing a soccer game for an event. It was a fundraiser. And one kid stopped me and said, I used to be ashamed of saying that I am from Saint Michel or Montreal North because people would always use that as a discriminating item against me, and I used to be ashamed. And now, since you've been telling everybody that you're from Saint Michel, you're from Montreal North, and that the fact that you have created 3737 gives me great joy and pride to say that I'm from Saint Michel. And if you don't know Saint Michel, Google 3737. I think that was quite amazing.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
And that's
wow.
Giving hope, and hopefully that kid who's in secondary school, in high school, hopefully he dreams of becoming the next Mark Zuckerberg or the next Amazon, or founding the next Amazon or the next Airbnb or Uber. It's all about dream, but also having a dream backed by a vision, and that's what the 3737 is all about.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that is just incredible, and I think you hit something there that I was actually talking to somebody about yesterday. Where when you focus, I don't know where I heard this, but when you focus on creating wealth within the black community, because historically it's been the least privileged in that sense, you end up creating wealth for everybody.
Absolutely.
And I think people see your success now, and you've started multiple companies, but it wasn't always like that, right? You went through a process. You came to Canada at 8 years old, couldn't speak French or English, and you literally went through that process, of being molded. But what I wanted to know is, like, what helped in your process to making you successful?
Yeah, so for me, I was never motivated by money. I was motivated by not going back. So I was terrified of going back. So I kept running fast and fast and fast and kept, moving forward. So, and the way that I moved forward was to be able to step back and reflect on the people that are successful, what makes them successful. So I became a study. I was reading a ton of books, and I played a lot of sport. I played soccer a lot. So I was curious about what made them a better athlete. What made a George Weah more successful than another player? What made a successful business person better than others? So I learned that quickly. Your environment has a lot to do with that. You can be competitive in your environment, but if your environment is second best, well, you're the champion of the second. So I quickly figured out that I had to dislocate myself and found wherever I could find the first class or the best and associate myself with them so I could learn from them. So I think the paranoia of going backwards and the paranoia of not knowing actually enabled me to always run faster and always strive to do better or learn from the best. And I think, if anything, what makes me different from today versus yesterday is I'm always looking to learn. And I'm always willing to accept that my ways are not the best ways and that somebody else has a better way to do it. And if they do, then why reinvent the wheel? And so that's fundamentally, I think, for me, that was my recipe of success, is I was never afraid to basically take whatever model that works and then study it and learn how to become better at it.
And that's what great leaders do.
Well, I cannot say that this is a model that's going to work for everyone. But, history has proven that if you surround yourself with successful people, then you have a chance of learning from their success or benefiting from their success. And so in my on my journey to starting businesses or becoming an entrepreneur, I had a strong foundation. I had a foundation where I knew I couldn't fail. The only failure is if I stopped. But I knew I would fall, but I would get up because I knew what I was going to do and I knew I was well trained. It's like saying, when you ask, an Olympian or a sprinter, a Usain Bolt, does he think that, he can win the race? Uh, you know, his answer is not because he knows he's a physical specimen. He knows that he's so prepared. His preparation is so tough that there's no way he will fail. He knows that he has prepared better than anybody else, even though he had a God-given gift of physical specimen that no one had. But he trained hardest than anybody else. And this is true in business. In business, the people that succeed are the ones that, they are not afraid of sacrificing short-term gains for long-term success. And that's what I had to do.
With entrepreneurs that I have on the show, I obviously it's because you add value, and with you, because I've looked at the stuff that you've done, and we've talked about it. It's just incredible the value that you add. So what I want to know is if you were to quantify that in your own words, regardless of how everybody sees the value that you're adding, how do you see the value that you're adding?
Well, so for me, I take it one step at a time. The reality is, when it's all said and done, we are born in this world naked and we'll leave naked. And so for me, what will be left of me personally, people will say, well, he at least tried to make, to improve things. He at least put his money where his mouth is. And I'm a doer. So, a lot of people, especially in the Black community, we get frozen by the thought of the mountain that we have to climb, all the discrimination that we have to go through, we have to live every day, all the hurdles, the struggles, and all that stuff. I look at this with preparation. So for me, I told you I wasn't born in this country. I come from another country, Haiti, which is probably one of the poorest countries, if not the poorest country in the world. But that gave me an edge. What I had to go through by the time that I was 8 years old, I'm looking at these young white dudes who are 12 years old. They're acting like they're babies. I had so much experience. I knew so much more than they did. So for me, it was an advantage. So I think, for me, what is important is not what I do or what I say. It's what's left. What is left is, was I able to help somebody? Was I able to transfer knowledge? Did I inspire somebody to try to be better? That's all that matters. I can have the largest bank account in the world. It still doesn't matter if I don't use my knowledge and my money and my strength to improve on things. I want my kids to build on what I did. And I want the young kid who's coming from a poor Black neighborhood to think that, if he did it, then I can do it as well. So that's for me, it's a long-winded answer, but I don't think it's one or the other. I think, number one, success brings a certain responsibility. And for me, whether that success is through work or sports or entertainment or whatever, the responsibility is you have to bring others with you. And that's what I'm trying to do every day.
Man, you hit on a point that I've been trying to get across to people for a while, and that is when you grew up in a poor country, let's say, because similar to you, I grew up in Liberia, which is, I think, the third poorest country in the world. And the time I was growing up, there was a civil war, right? So essentially the first 14 years of my life was a civil war. But I see that as, I'm grateful for that because that gave me a sort of, I'll call it even an edge, because your perspective on the world is so different, that, and I don't know how to quantify it, but yeah, your perspective on the world is very different, and you are willing to push harder than the average person. So I think that is an important point that you highlighted.
Right, and it 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 it, it it's a journey. So it didn't kill you. It made you stronger, and it gave you a tool that now, if you use in proper means, that could be your fuel, and that fuel, and also it gives you a set of perspective, because people sometimes we don't realize how good we have it until we've we don't have it. So I know what it's like. I said earlier, I know what it's like being poor. You know, I know what it's like not having anything to eat. And I know what it's like, going to school with an empty stomach. So therefore, I don't want, and I'm grateful I've gone through that and I survived, because I don't want to go back anymore. That's my motivation. That's cool. It's pushing me every day. And I don't want my kids to that. And I don't want my neighbors' kids to go through that. And I don't want anybody to have to go through that. So therefore, it actually fuels my energy to do more, to give more. And that's a significant advantage for me over anybody else.
Yeah. And on your business, what is the biggest, what's the biggest challenge you've faced so far in your business?
My name and my skin color and my heritage gives me always gives me as a first pass is a disadvantage, because I'm in tech, I'm in high tech. There are not many Haitians, there are not many blacks, and when they think of black, they think of Africa, and they think, well, we got to go help those Africans, where I'm trying to tell a different story, to say, no, actually, we don't need your help. We just need you to see us as a potential partner, as on equal footing. We just need you to see Africa as an opportunity, because 50 years from now, 1 in every 4 human being will be African. There'll be mountain of opportunities. There'll be countless opportunities. So you have to see Africa as an opportunity, and not, I'm going to help those Africans, or I'm going to help those Haitians. We're past that. And I think that fundamentally people, because I'm black and because I'm in a non-traditional black field, people always think that, I cannot be world class. And so it's a disadvantage, but it also is an advantage, because when I'm able to deliver, then I surprise everybody. But nobody gives me benefit of the doubt. Where if I was Indian or Chinese or Japanese or Jewish or German, I would have benefit of the doubt. Maybe they would finance my venture, from the get-go. But now I have to invest more, I have to show more, I have to prove more, and it slows me down.
But you get over it anyways.
No choice.
No choice. That's good. So, man, it's I'll just put it plainly. Like, we've already talked about, what it is that drives you, and I think it is incredible, and especially in the tech sense, especially in this world, a lot of times it's hard nowadays to find people who are not driven by money, but still make the money to drive their vision. Because a lot of times you have the guys who want to do good, but they don't know how to make the money, and then you have the guys who only care about the money. So from your point, what is that one advice that you'll give to Africans or young Africans who are trying to add value to their community, whether it is in the diaspora or whether it's on the continent or whether it's in the Caribbean, wherever it is in the world, trying to add value to the community? What is that one advice that you give them?
I think the first thing is, as I said earlier, at times we tend to see ourselves below. We look from the bottom, and from my perspective, we should reverse this. We have this amazing opportunity ahead of us, and we have to seize that opportunity. Africa is to be built. Africa has so much potential. So just think about, why are people looking to Africa as an opportunity? It's because, frankly, it is an opportunity. And from my perspective, the biggest recommendation that I would say is to think of the world as your market. Be a global conqueror, a world conqueror. Think of from day one, how can you use technology to level the playing field, to reduce the barriers. So I have customers who are from Asia, and frankly, they don't care whether I'm black. They just
Yep.
And if
it's like you're delivered.
That's where they get it from. And all they see is this company, this service provider from Canada. And so from that perspective, think of the world as your market, and not be afraid to challenge, status quo. And especially the more people view obstacles, the better it is, because that means it's hard. And if you stick at it, then the chances are at some point you'll succeed, and the chances are that it's going to be big. So perseverance, look at the world as your market.
Man, that is amazing advice. Now to our big last question. If you had 10,000 Africans at your disposal with expertise in every field, what would you do?
Man, I would build an army of people that can transfer knowledge. The most valuable thing that we have is our knowledge and time. And so if I can create a multiplier effect by transferring my knowledge to 10,000 others, man, imagine the possibilities. What could we do? So for me, I would create an army to institutionalize knowledge transfer, because that is what it's all about. The Jewish community, why they're so strong, is they have this institutionalized way of transferring knowledge, transferring wealth, and from one generation to the next, they do it. The Germans, why are they so strong? Because they have knowledge transfer. They've institutionalized it. The Nordics, Danish, and even Iceland, even Norwegians and Sweden and Finland, they have history of knowledge transfer, and that's, if I had 10,000 Africans, man, I would transfer so much knowledge to so many people.
Hopefully one day that can be done. Okay, man, it's amazing having you on. It's been, like I said, you are one of the entrepreneurs that I really look up to. So it's been amazing having you on. Rapid fire, just 2. What is your favorite book?
Oh, I have many, but the Innovator's Dilemma is the one that I'm cherishing right now.
That is awesome. And outside of Haiti, what is your favorite country?
Jamaica.
So thank you so much for coming on. It's amazing having you on.
Thank you.
Thank you again for listening to another episode of 10,000 Africans podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to send me an email at 10,000africans@gmail.com. Your emails mean a lot to me. And before we go, do not forget to subscribe to 10,000 Africans podcast on iTunes, like, share, review, and let the world know how you feel about the podcast. Thank you so much. As always, have a wonderful week.